Ojvazod, Odvari, and welcome to the world building stream. Can everybody hear me okay? See me okay? Let me know in the chat if you cannot. Yeah, it's been a while. How's everybody doing? Happy New Year. I hope that you all had a good holiday. I had a very busy one, but I'm so happy to be back. So happy to be tweeting again and streaming again and kind of back to my regularly scheduled life. I had about 2 weeks of D&D adventure camps that I ran over the winter break, and I Actually managed it. I thought I was going to peel my own face off, but it actually wasn't that bad. But now that I'm here and I'm back, it's time to resume our world building streams. So I've done a little bit of work on the campaign since the last time we spoke. It's been a while, at least a month, maybe a little longer. But we are working on something very special today. Well, not that special. No more special than anything else in the game. We're talking about random encounters. So I've been working on this table. I actually put in a lot of work on the campaign during like a 5-day period that I took off. I was just like pouring a bunch of my hyperfixation onto designing not only these random encounters, but also I designed the whole top level of Truth Throne, which we talked about several streams ago. And that was fun, exhausting, but it was like a good way to get a bunch of creative energy out. But I didn't quite finish the random encounters, and so that's what we're going to be working on tonight. What's up, David? Thanks for coming. Yeah, so this is kind of how it breaks down. I have the random encounters broken up by different biomes. So we've got Arctic, Forest, Hill, Mountain, Tundra, and Underground. Those are the kind of 6 different biomes that we're going to see in Khûm. And I've gone through a bunch of different iterations of D&D and similar games, and I have just made a list of every monster that I could conceivably see the characters encountering in any one, if not multiple, of these biomes. So we've got the Ankeg, the Aurochs, all the way down at the very bottom here to the Jorn and the Yeti. And then I just go through each one, and I write 3 sample encounters down here that the characters might encounter these creatures as they're traveling, usually overland in Khûm. I watched a lot of Colville, Matt Colville's videos when I was on my winter camps, and I really liked the way he dealt with terrain and overland travel. So I wanted to kind of do an adaptation of that system, where basically the characters undertake a skill challenge to get from one location to the other. And every time they fail, they encounter something along the way, right? And it might not always be a fight. It could be an NPC. It could be a terrain obstacle or hazard. But, you know, the longer the trek is, the more likely it is they have multiple encounters on the way. So we're just going to go bank some of these monsters out and just write 3 sort of encounter seeds for each one. Right now, I have done all the monsters in the Arctic and in the Forest. And I kind of like to do it sort of by biome, because it helps me kind of visualize where these encounters might take place. But as you can see, several of these creatures could occur in multiple locations. Like, we have the Blood Crow down here that can basically be anywhere but underground. But we're starting with Hill, and we're starting here at the top with the Aurochs, which is a particularly challenging one to start with, because I kind of have a lot of similar monsters already down. So let me make a new category here for Aurochs. Can y'all see that okay? Sort of. Let me see if I can scroll that a little better. How's that? So if we put Aurochs here. Now, an Aurochs, for those of you who don't know, is basically like a huge prehistoric bull. Now, the difficulty with the Aurochs is that, as I said, I have probably half a dozen similar monsters. So, like, I could cut them. I like the idea of there being a wide variety, even amongst similar creatures. But what we need here are 3 unique encounter hooks that characters who are traveling over the frozen hills of Khûm might encounter these Aurochs in. So let's look at some similar ones that we already have to try to separate them a little bit. The giant boar is close. We've got, for the giant boar, we have a goblin claims that his giant boar can sniff out treasure for a 1 gold piece fee. If paid, there's a 30% chance that the boar sniffs out a piece of treasure, which he gives to the characters. There's a 70% chance the boar sniffs out a piece of mammoth dung, which both the boar and the goblin enthusiastically eat, right? So that one's kind of a weird one, but those are sort of what we mean, where they're not necessarily just like, this is the number of Aurochs that attack the party. It's kind of a little story seed that we could do for a kind of little mini adventure. One of my giant boar options, if you could see that, is 30 to 50 giant boars attack the party, because of course. And then we have a great blind boar sniffs around the party's location. If they don't take some action to mask their scent, the boar will likely attack. So a lot of them can be kind of, again, run-ins, encounters that aren't necessarily fights. As a rule of thumb, I like to have 3 choices, one of which is always a fight, one of which is almost never a fight, and one of which could kind of go either way. So the giant boar is an example. The giant elk is another one. As the characters hunt for food in the wilderness, a giant elk appears to defend the deer they're about to slay. A giant elk in rut postures and trumpets at the party, attempting to drive them off. And a giant elk leads an enormous herd of caribou. What's up, Castle Red Fox? Thanks for coming by. One watched over by a pair of lycanthropic wolves. So again, there's a lot. The giant walrus is kind of similar. The characters come too close to the mating fields of a giant walrus, and it rushes them, threatening them with its tremendous bulk. A wounded giant walrus is washed ashore, pierced by a dozen harpoons, crying piteously. While crossing a body of water on a boat, a giant walrus attempts to sink or capsize the party's vessel. What else? The mammoth is kind of similar. A circle of mammoths protect their young against a lurking winter wolf. An angry bull mammoth charges the characters, full of spunk and rage. A mammoth with a harness approaches the harness and reins approaches the party, looking for other humans. I think that's the last one that sort of is in that category. Oh, why do we have 2 trolls? Weird. Delete that. Yeah, so the challenge here is to think of 3 Oryx encounters that are not just exactly the same thing as the giant boar or the giant elk or the giant walrus encounters, right? Or the mammoth encounters. So we've done the, like, muskox circling their young, which feels cool for the Oryx. I like the idea of like a huge herd, like a big, like, wildebeest African migration style herd. So like an enormous herd of thousands of Oryx. Oop. Oryx crosses the party's path. They can choose to wade through the numbers and potentially get crushed, or they can wait and delay their journey. Right, you can kind of challenge them on other things besides just combat, right? That, like, yeah, they're not going to attack you, they're herd animals, but there's so many of them moving across the horizon that, you know, you're gonna have to wait. That might work better for just, like, plain caribou, but I think it's kind of interesting. So that one is like, that seems like it might be a combat, it might not be a combat one. I'm trying to think what, like, the obvious combat with an Oryx would look like. We've done the, like, territorial male 3 times, so we could just do the territorial male version of the Oryx, which I don't think is terrible. I've also done the, like, baby as well a couple of times on this list. I like the idea of in some way involving, like, a sentient creature. So maybe it's about... So orcs in Khûm, right, are like lycanthropes that herd animals. Usually, like, they basically live in animal form, but they're technically orcs. So maybe there's something about, like, an oryx being herded, or like an oryx that's run away from its... Yeah, what about... I mean, that's kind of the baby again. This is a really tough one to start with. Oryx. Yeah. A poacher hunting a herd? Yeah, that could be cool. I'm trying to think if we have poachers. I know we have, like, sea lion poachers for baby sea lion pelts. But yeah, I don't hate the idea of, like, a human hunter. a human hunter or poacher. It's kind of a middle ground one again, too. Asks the heroes to help them kill an Oryx. Oroches. An Oryx. If they help, they draw the ire of the local lycanthropes. Boy, it is really slow. Oh, of course, here come the ambulances. 1 second. Yeah, I want one that's like unambiguously a combat. You know, because like they could just turn the poacher down. One thug. They're big. They're dumb. What's their deal? I'm trying to think if there's like, maybe we need some lore about the Oryx. So they're really big, obviously. I don't know that they're native to Khûm. I mean, they would basically be now. It's been thousands of years. But I think that they were probably brought by the orcs. When the orcs first came to Khûm thousands of years ago, they were invited in by the current dwarven Queen of Gora orc friend. And they brought a lot of their herds with them. Like the wargs that live in Khûm were brought by the orcs as well. Got another ambulance. Ridiculous. So I wonder if the Oryx were brought as well. So they're not necessarily native. But I do like the idea of like a bison Oryx. I think it's cool if they're like really shaggy, you know? Here, 1 sec, guys. That's a funny idea, Castle Red Fox. I don't know that it would happen, like, in the wild, but that's interesting. I'm trying to think if there's, like... Again, that's very non-combat, right? Like, I'm not opposed to there being at least one non-combat option, but what I kind of want is, like, an overtly, this is a combat scenario. Maybe we'll come back to it. I'm, like, banging my head against this Oryx thing. Yeah, going on a rampage is kind of interesting. Oh, yeah, what if it's, like, yeah... That's cool. Okay. Thank you, David. That's a good one. An Oryx pulling a cart. Pulling a caravan wagon. Has gotten spooked. Yeah, no worries, Castle Red Fox. It's pulling a caravan wagon, has gotten spooked. And is thrashing... caravan. So we'll just say it's pulling a wagon. It's kind of not a combat again, right? But you could calm it down. But it's like a cow, right? Like, this one is basically a combat. I almost wonder if we lose the poacher and we just have it be like an Oryx attacks the party, and if they kill it, yeah, an angry Oryx attacks the party. That's cool. Attacks the party. Yeah. And if they... Yeah, let's... I just like the... Yeah, I like the baby calf. I'm just worried you could defuse all of these with no combat. And, like, it's probably fine. Can you guys not see that? There you go. It's probably fine. I like giving birth to it. Yeah, that's neat. That's unique. I haven't done anything like that before. So let's assume that this one is like most likely a combat. The pulling the wagon has gotten spooked and is thrashing the caravan. I think that's mostly a combat. Then let's say that like the party stumbles on a pregnant calf. On a pregnant cow. And if they don't intercede, because that's what's interesting about this one, right? If you take Castle Red Fox's idea that like there is combat, it's just not against the Arks, right? They don't intercede. We'll do Winter Wolves again. Winter Wolves are a nice catch-all because they can kind of be evil. Kill and eat both her and the baby. And the calf. Yeah, that's cool. I like that. Cool. All right. That was a tough one. That was a really tough one to start with. Thanks for your help, guys. Okay, what's next? So we did I already have the Awakened Tree, which we can read. I have the Blood Crow. Ooh, the Bullet. Okay. So the Awakened Tree, we have, while camping, an Awakened Tree wraps its roots around the characters and attempts to strangle them in their sleep. A forest of dead trees, one that speaks ominously and groans and rumbles, seems to spring to life on the character's route. And a circle of awakened trees begins to close around the party as they cross a forest, dead branches stretching across their path, seeking to trap them. That's Awakened Tree. I actually really like the next one. The Blood Crows are fun. Bloodhawk keeps coming up all the time in the like monsters in the monster manual, but I find Bloodhawks to be kind of weird. Like, hawks in big groups seem strange to me, but I like the idea of these kind of like red-feathered, very pugnacious crows. There's a lot of crows in Seattle where I used to live, so that's kind of what I was imagining. So we have a single blood crow steals something from the party. The item it steals is nothing necessarily consequential. The characters can recover the item by killing the crow, offering a goblet of meat with animal handling, or tracking the bird back to its nest with survival. A flock of crows, which is one swarm of ravens. Blood crows follows the party. Roll again on the table to determine which encounter they anticipate, right? The idea is that the crows are kind of like vultures, right? And they circle around you. That if you get them around, it's almost as though the crows know that something bad is going to happen. And then the party observes a flock of blood crows from a distance, squawking over the scene of carnage. If they investigate, they encounter one of the following scenes. Either an enormous dead animal, the kill of another predator, a slaughtered campsite, its humanoid occupants scattered around, or an active battle between two forces. Roll twice and combine the encounter. So blood crows are fun, but now we have the bullet. The boulet. So I haven't really decided what I want to do with bullets in Undune. I haven't really thought about them. Obviously the land shark, right? Let's look up the lore for the bullet. Because I have not had to think of these. So we're in hills, but I think they're also found in the tundra for Khûm. Let's look them up. Again, it's kind of cold here, but that doesn't necessarily mean you couldn't get bullets, I don't feel like. I have a soft spot for them, but I haven't figured out a good place for them in my lore. Blights, bullets. A massive predator that terrorizes any land it inhabits. Also called a land shark, it lives only to feed. Irascible and rapacious, fear no other creature, and they attack with no regard for superior numbers or strength. Bullets use their powerful claws to tunnel through the earth while they hunt. Heedless of obstruction, they can uproot trees, cause landslides on loose slopes. That's interesting. Leave sinkholes behind them. When vibrations in the soil and rock alert a bullet to movement, it shoots to the surface, its jaws spread wide as it attacks. So maybe there's one of the encounters is that, like, first they have to weather a landslide, and then it's a bullet attack. Right? Like, it triggers a landslide, and then when they're kind of, like, dazed and disoriented, the bullet strikes. That's kind of cool. The bullet feels like it's going to be largely combat. You know, there's not a lot of other depth to the bullet. A landslide nearly buries the party. But it's only the beginning. Mounts for Earth Elemental Cultist, that's cool. For the beginning Or a bullet. All right, let's do this. Let's do a bullet causes an earth slide that nearly flattens the party. Then it attacks. It's a landslide. A landslide. We should bold both of those. Yeah, thanks, Castle Rock. I appreciate it. That nearly buries the party before it attacks. It attacks. Yeah, something about Ankhegs is interesting. I have Ankhegs, but I have them as much more subterranean in Khûm, because they're associated with my Grimlocks. But I could see something like that. Now, let's keep reading this. Underground hunters use their powerful claws to tunnel through the earth when they hunt. Heedless of obstruction. Oh yeah, we read that already. A bullet ranges across temperate lands, feeding on any animals and humanoids it comes across. These creatures dislike dwarf and elf flesh. Huh. So they often kill them before realizing what they are. A bullet loves halfling meat the most, and it is never happier than when it is chasing plump halflings across an open field. Weird. That's kind of a cool detail that they have, like, particular tastes. Has no lair, but roams a hunting territory up to 30 miles wide. Its sole criterion is availability for food. When it has eaten everything in an area, a bullet moves on. These creatures often home in, I think I mean hone in, on humanoid settlements, terrorizing them until their panicked residents have fled or until the bullet is slain. All creatures shun bullets, which treat anything that moves as food, even other predators and bullets. Ooh, what about two bullets fighting? That's cool. Two bullets fighting one another. I definitely have, like, big monsters fighting each other. But I like the idea that, like, they think of everything as food, that they're just, like, completely voracious. Bullets come together only to mate, resulting in a bloody act of claws and teeth that usually ends with the male's death and consumption. That's interesting. It is home in. Oh, I've been saying it wrong. I always thought it was hone in. Oh no. Who have I said that to? Two bullets fighting each other, turns out. Yeah, that's good. They're mating. That, like, they fight, and presumably you move your way around them, but then halfway through, they start to make love, right? They start to get it on, and you're like, oh no. That's funny. Someone says, some sages believe the bullet is the result of a mad wizard's experiments at crossbreeding snapping turtles and armadillos with infusions of demon ichor, great. Bullets have been thought to be extinct at different times, but after the years without a sighting, these creatures inevitably reappear. Because they're young or almost never seen, some sages suspect that bullets maintain secret nesting grounds from which adults strike out into the world. Yeah, like, seeing, so we have other burrowing creatures like the Remoraz and stuff. Like, seeing the destruction that it brings is cool, right? If we're looking for, like, a non-combat encounter. I think I have a Remoraz encounter where, like, the ice underneath you melts because it's weakened by the Remoraz passing beneath. Yeah, hone in. I'm Midwestern too, man. I'm from Minnesota. So, yeah, that's my instinct. So, it could be that it's, like, devastated some countryside, right? It could be that it, like, them finding its eggs or something is kind of interesting. Like, something about the bullet's origin, I feel like, is necessary. But I don't really know anything about bullet origins. I'm not crazy about, like, oh, wizard made it. Like, I feel like that's hand-waved for a whole bunch of different kinds of monsters, you know? Yeah, I'm trying to think. Like, I like them being just hungry all the time. Like a... Because we have a combat. A bullet causes a landslide that nearly buries the party before it attacks. Two bullets fighting each other. It turns out they're mating. The idea of a bullet, like, trying to eat something that it can't eat is interesting, right? That they come across a bullet, like, who's trying to eat, like... I'm trying to think of, like, a good example. Like, yeah, what's one that's definitely not a combat, though, right? Because the two bullets fighting each other. I mean, but I guess you almost would never, that would never turn into one. Oh, could they be linked to Hadar? Maybe, but they don't really feel like aberrations to me, you know? I like that you're using your brain, though, David. You're really using your brain. They don't feel like they're from another planet, you know? They feel natural to me. So what about, like, a bullet that is attempting to eat? I'm thinking about caravans again, right? A caravan strongbox. So it's like an armored truck, right? It's like a wagon that's got a big metal dwarven made strongbox, and the bullet is just trying to chomp into it, and it can't. And it's like, you could just let the bullet do that, but what's in the strongbox? Maybe there's someone in the strongbox, right? A dwarven strongbox, like a dwarven strong wagon or something like that, which is a cool idea in and of itself. Strong wagon. I don't know where they come from. I'm not sure. Attempt to eat a dwarven strong wagon with someone trapped inside. It's like a shark cage, right? It's like if you're gonna make the shark comparison, you know, it's like trying to bite them and get it in its mouth and it can't, right? I think that's cool. I dig that one. Okay, cool. Then you also like get an NPC in there too, right? It's like 2 for 1. Oh, we skipped the axe beak. Oops. Axe beaks. Let's talk about axe beaks. Axe beaks don't have nearly as much lore. So again, I think I picked them because they appear in Rime of the Frost Maiden, and they seemed cool. But maybe they're not quite right. Basically, like chocobos, right? But it's such a cold climate. You know, what's a axe beak that like lives in the cold? Hit a box of potions. I did run an adventure where a bullet had like swallowed a dragon's egg, and they had to like jump into the maw of the bullet to get the thing out, right? Like I gave it a proper swallow. That's cool though. I like that Castle Red Fox, that there's like random potion effects. Axe beak. So I think it's a thing like they are used in Rime of the Frostbite, and I like the idea of axe beaks being like introduced to Khûm, right? That they were brought here. I think Rime of the Frostmaiden talks about because their big feet, right? Like splay really nicely on the ground. So what if they encounter like an axe beak? A saddled axe beak. It's kind of like the mammoth one, but this is another, like, it's a beast of burden, right? How do you make it interesting? Axe beak. Dragging a dead rider. Their face clearly axed in. Right? It's combat, right? So this is presuming that like the axe beak is the primary thing you're encountering instead of like a person on an axe beak. You know, you could do it that way, but I think they were brought here relatively recently, like within the past 20-some years. They're used by Golden Coast Trading Company, who are the kind of East India Trading Company analog in the north. Honestly, the Hudson Bay Company is probably a better analogy up here. And they're used to like ferry things around, right? So that one's like a combat, right? This is like an obviously. I think that they probably have a it even says it here in the book. It has a nasty disposition and tends to attack any unfamiliar creature that wanders too close. Cassowaries have that reputation too, and I think that's kind of what we're going for here, like a big, mean devil bird that they just hate people, right? So I don't mind the idea of them being a little bit more combat based, a little bit more quarrelsome than maybe an actual giant flightless bird would be. it pulling a sledge of cargo is interesting. But again, it's like, where do the people go? How many times can you really do that? I mean, you could put an NPC on there, like a courier, maybe. A human courier. Mounted on an axe beak. Party encounters a mounted courier. Encounters a human courier. So it's kind of an NPC, right? But specifically, they're mounted on an axe beak. Axe beak. That, at first sight of the party, turns and runs at full speed. What are they carrying? Right? So it becomes a chase, but it's about how much faster the axe beak is than, our dwarven PCs. Axe beak. They've got a pretty obvious combat one. The chase could be a combat. Yeah, now I'm thinking about eggs. Yeah, the party uncovers a crate of axe beak eggs in the snow. Beak eggs in the snow. Yeah, I like that, David. I've done the mother a couple of times, but I like the idea that like the humans would have they would breed them, like in like an ostrich farm, but then they would have like ship the eggs around, either as food. Oh god, it reminds me of there were these crazy egg wars in like San Francisco, in like during the gold rush, because it was extremely expensive and difficult to import eggs for some reason. And so they ended up eating a lot of seagull eggs. So yeah, I wonder if it's a similar thing. I think they uncover a crate of them, right? And it's like you could eat them, or you could take them home and you could raise them, right? But it's like clearly not a combat encounter. Yeah, that's cool. I like those. That's the trick, David, is that it's with animals and beasts. It's like you do the cub, and you do the wounded one, and you do the mating one, and you do the one where they're fighting another big creature, and then you're out, right? I'm trying to make these all completely unique. So we've done the crag cat. I've done the dire wolf. I've done the dryad. Ooh, I haven't done the Etten yet. I love Ettins. Let's talk about Ettins. So, Etten. Okay, I'm going to pull up the lore here. So we actually do have a little bit of Etten lore. It's really ancient, prehistory stuff, but it can guide us a little bit. As written, Ettins have a weird Groomsh thing, which bores me. Which, it's fine. I understand why they do stuff like that, but, I don't know. I'm not interested in Groomsh. Etten. Okay. So, on Dune, the history of the giants is that they were the first people that the gods made, and they were basically told to watch over Yogg and prevent Yogg's rising from the crust of the earth, and they essentially failed at it. And when the gods came back, they discovered that the giants had almost freed Yogg. They sealed Yogg away again, and then kind of demanded an explanation from the giants. And the Ettins were basically the original Ettins were giants that had spent too much time debating and contemplating what is a god, and they were basically philosophers, and constantly arguing with each other about their moral their moral responsibility, to tend to these things, kind of these very Greco-Roman philosophers. And so the myth goes that the gods punished the Ettins, and they punished each one of these types of giants kind of, specifically, again, a very Greek myth, turning into a constellation kind of a way, by giving them a second head that they can always be arguing. So on Dune, Ettins are less rampaging monsters and more kind of goofy Muppets that constantly argue with each other. They're definitely still big and scary and dangerous, but their two heads never get along, and they are always rather than being idiots, like they're always arguing about the nature of reality and philosophy and stuff like that, right? They're kind of like eggheads. So they don't have a lot of like. I wonder if you do a thing where like one head is like the ego and one head is the super ego or something like that, or the id. They don't have a lot of like. Never encountered one on Dune, so there's no history to fall back on. But there's the kind of mythology. A combat. So definitely one of these then is that like an Etten is deep in an argument with itself, right? And it calls on the characters. Is deep in an argument with itself, and if the characters don't avoid the creature, it attempts to draw them in to its argument, right? Like both heads try to convince the party of what it believes, right? To draw the characters into their argument. And if the characters like don't engage or like, you know, don't give the argument the respect it deserves, they attack, right? So it's just, they're these kind of silly Alice in Wonderland sort of characters, because I think there's something fun about that. Let's see what the book has to say for other ideas, because that's again kind of one of those like, one of those could go either way things. Yeah, David, Ettins are so much fun for that reason specifically. Like I really love them. I feel like why have a hill giant when you could have an Etten, you know? Dual personality. Ooh, you gotta do the Etten. An Etten guards a pass. Etten guards a mountain pass. Guards a narrow pass, I should say, because it might not be a mountain. A narrow pass. And gives them the one of us is lying. One of us is telling the truth thing, right? And the idea is that, like, the players know the answer, but they think they're being especially clever, right? Like, one of us is lying. Oh, what did I do? Weird. One of us is telling the truth. Shtick. I did one time, one version of this with two like floating heads, and they were like, it was like a bunch of trials in a dungeon, right? And I had one of the heads like I proposed a question like one of us is lying and one of us is telling the truth, and then when they said like, oh, it's that one, like because they easily figure it out, right? Like it's very simple. There's like the one question they have to ask, right? The one that they say, you're the liar, then it says, like, are you calling me a liar? And it attacks them. And, like, then it turns into a combat, right? So it's like, I like finding little ways to spin kind of classic scenarios. That way the players, like, fall into the trap, you know, that they think, oh, we've got this. And it's actually a little bit more complicated than that. And I think they honor it. Like, I think if either they honor it or they like get so involved in it, like the other one, they're trying to solve it themselves or they're trying to like help the party, right? Like it's not a danger at all, right? This is like there's no chance the Ettins will attack them. It's just purely a like thought exercise. Yeah, I think that's fun. So let's think about one that is 100% a combat. I've done stuff with Ettins before where they talk about this a little bit, where it's like they, one head has to sleep while one head is awake. And so especially if you do like a split personality thing with the Ettins heads that like, you know, one of them is the violent one and one of them is not violent. Like, you know, do you do some iteration on that? Kind of cheesy versions I've done where like one head is like a painter and just wants to paint stuff, and the other head hates the paintings, and so when one is awake and it's painting, the other one then tries to smash it. See you later, Joey. Thanks for coming. But I want one that's like clearly a fight. You know, it at least tries to attack them. Let me see. Solitary lives. Ettin's twin heads are always the same gender with a body to match. Females are the dominant gender among Ettins, and they initiate the Ettins mating rituals. Hunts and conquers a male, which cares for and feeds her during her 6-month pregnancy. That's interesting. Once the child is born, the male Ettin is released from servitude. When the child is old enough to hunt for itself, the mother sends it away and abandons the den. Okay. Huh. A baby Ettin? I'm trying to think of, like, somehow, some way to make a philosopher try to fight you, right? Like, a drunk Ettin is maybe kind of interesting. Yeah, a drunken Ettin. Ettin stumbles across the party, accusing them of calling it an idiot. Yeah, that's kind of fun. And simple. You know, they don't all have to be extremely complicated, but I do like the Ettins being a little bit more cerebral than other giants. Okay, that's the Ettin. The Frostworm I already have. The Gale of Dur I don't have yet. So our Gale of Durs are really weird. We designed them on a stream a while ago. I think they're cool, but they're very strange. But I actually might pull that up. I don't know if y'all will be able to see it, but I think I'm going to dig around and see if I can get that. I might get some video lag while I do this, but we did come up with some cool Gale of Dur ideas. So our Gale of Durs are a lot more Fae-like than other iterations of them, where basically the idea is that they have these intensely long memories, but the main difference with the Gale of Dur is that when it takes a certain amount of damage, it kind of like an ooze, it splits into 2 rocks. And the big takeaway there is that once they split, both of those 2 rocks are completely new creatures. So they forget everything that happened up to that point. So the idea is that if you do get into a fight with a Gale of Dur, once it breaks, then the fight's over, because they don't understand why you're fighting, right? They don't know who you are. They've never met you. So they're kind of fun, right? Yeah, with no physical needs, Gale of Dur, yeah, all they care about is entertaining themselves. So since they're stones, they don't need to eat or, drink or sleep or anything like that. They just love to play games, especially risky or destructive ones. They ride avalanches, they play catch with enormous boulders, and they swim in magma. While playful and impish at heart, Gale of Dur are nonetheless dangerous because they simply don't understand how fragile fleshy creatures are. And they reproduce by breaking to smaller boulders, like we said. So I think these ones are pretty simple, because I've already written a couple of hooks here. A Gale of Dur tosses a boulder at a party and shouts, "Catch," right? That kind of stuff, where it's like they're not aggressive per se, but they could definitely get in your way. Okay, a Gale of Dur throws a boulder at the party and shouts, "Catch." And it's not like a cool line. It's like they legitimately think the party should catch the huge boulder that's coming flying their way. A Gale of Dur invites the party to ride on an avalanche with them. Says it knows a shortcut and invites the party to ride an avalanche. Ride an avalanche with them. One that proves very destructive to the surrounding area and adds extra time on their return trip, right? And then lastly, the one I have here is a mountain is nothing but an enormous sleeping Gale of Dur, which I think is kind of cool, but it's not really a fight, and we don't really have like a clear combat. We have the Gale of Dur throws a boulder at the party and shouts, "Catch." It's kind of cool. Dare or dare with them. That's kind of cool. Yeah, I like that. Is it a fight, though? I mean, it could be if it says, like, arm wrestle me or fight me or whatever, yeah. A Gale of Dur. Is it like it attacks the party because it was dared to do it? Because you still kind of get that dare thing in there. I do like dare or dare as a cute, like, idiocy thing to it. Yeah, I think it's like the Caleb Door like tries to crush the party, and then it's revealed like if they, yeah, a Caleb Door attacks the party, while another one watches and shouts encouragement. It's revealed that the first Caleb Door was dared. It's revealed that the first Caleb Door was, Begaleb was dared to attack by the other. And it's got to be like something like, I dare you to go down there, you know, and like push him off a cliff, or like do something that like the Caleb Door aren't intending to hurt the characters. They just don't understand that they can't take it, right? Like, I think that's fun. So you still get that dare in there, but it's like obviously a combat, right? Okay, at least for a round or two, because you want to get them to split the Caleb Door and then have the weird memory thing, right? That's kind of the fun part of them as a monster. So a lot of these we already have. We have the giant boar. We have we don't have the giant goat. Oh, there's so many big hooved animals we have to figure out. Well, there's a couple here. I can think of at least one off the top of my head for the giant goat. Giant eagle. Yeah, we don't have giant eagle yet either. Okay, so giant goat is next. Giant goat. So the combat that I have is less of a combat. It's more like a lift from an encounter I ran recently. Giant goat. A territorial goat. Torial. Giant goat. Butts a character off a cliff. Headbutts a character off a cliff. Right, like the characters are like walking along a narrow path and they kind of get like stuck. Oh yeah, what if it's that? What if it's like one of the encounters is they're moving their way along like a narrow ledge? I guess that's kind of a mountain encounter, more or less of a hill encounter. Yeah, these are all kind of mountainy. Let's maybe do the giant goat for now, but I kind of think they're only interesting if you encounter them in the mountains. So let's maybe lose them in the hills and just make them purely a mountain monster. I think that's cool. So one of them is headbutts a character off a cliff. One of them is while like crossing an extremely narrow ledge, the party runs into a giant goat headed the opposite direction. Right, so it's like that traffic thing, right? Like when you're going down like a narrow corridor or something, and you have to like, oh, excuse me, and like animal handling or something, right? Like to get past the goat. As they climb, the characters spot giant goats taking a different route, more difficult route. If they all succeed on strength athletics checks, they can choose to follow the goat, and shave a day off their travel time. Right? They're like the goat paths. But the goats know how to kind of navigate in the mountains. And so totally not combat. You don't get attacked by them. But, you know, there's still some stakes there. That's cool. I like that. Giant goat. That was easy. Oh, giant eagle is next. Right. Okay. Giant eagle. So the giant eagles are a little complicated in my world as well. They are very much inspired by the giant eagles in The Hobbit. which was super, super formative to me when I was a kid. Ooh, I'm even going to go get it. I'll be right back. 1 second. So, I forget when it was published. Let me look. This is the 1973 gold cover of The Hobbit that has this awesome picture. I don't know if you can see it very well. Yeah, there you go. Of a giant eagle on it. This was my first fantasy book. I mean, I guess maybe Where the Wild Things Are. And I saw the cover, and I didn't know what to do with that eagle, right? Like, I loved it. Where to see these giant eagles carrying a party of dwarves and one halfling. Yeah. I actually don't hate the idea of that, of them seeing, like, eagles carrying people around. So, the eagles in my setting are intelligent and kind of, like, dogmatically good, a lot like they are in Tolkien. But the big difference is that they basically can't communicate with anybody. That the eagles have a society that is totally alien to most humanoids, and so there's always kind of an unease when you deal with them because you don't know how they work or how they think, and you kind of can't. Let me take another sip here and I'll explain it. There's no shared language, and even people who use things like speak with animals, the terms and the jargon and stuff doesn't really make sense. Like, eagles have a very strange and alien culture to humans and dwarves, but rather than being hostile, they're friendly. They're trying to help dwarves and humans, dwarves particularly in Khûm, achieve something, right? But it's unclear what it is. So dwarves will often be aided by eagles at like the last second or in unexpected ways, but they can't really ever grapple with it as to why. So there's something particularly fun about eagles in Khûm too, that they, when the dragons moved in during the Seven Sorrows, the eagles were being predated on by these white dragons. And so they basically flew off and they stole a roc's egg from another part of the world and brought it back to Khûm and basically raised it like a cuckoo in their nest. And so now they have this huge rock that they have trained to protect them from the dragons, right? So they are good aligned and like obviously helpful, but kind of strange and inexplicable. And alien. I like the idea that they're almost like chivalric. Like they have these like weird rituals and things that need to be done. Like they're very lawful almost. And if like the protocols aren't done in the right way, you can kind of get in eagle trouble, if that makes sense. But they are fundamentally good creatures, as it kind of goes back to Tolkien and the messengers of Manwë, the god of the air, and stuff like that. Like I liked the idea of the eagles being unequivocally a force for good, but that doesn't give you an easy answer. They're not going to come rescue you all the time, not only because, you know, they're not your taxis, but also because that might not be part of their sort of secret divine mandate, whatever that is. So a giant eagle presents the characters with a kill. A goat or a sheep. And they must perform some manner of ritual. Like, you know, not ritual in a magical sense, right? But like ritual of thanks before it will leave. Cool. Okay, giant eagle. Let's see. So combat here is interesting because it does imply that, like, you've done something wrong. I don't think it's, like, impossible for that to happen, right? It's just a matter of, like, how and why. Like, one of them could be, for, again, like a combat thing. Like, an eagle tries to prevent you from taking a certain route. A giant eagle descends to prevent the characters from taking a certain route. Detouring would cost them time, but the eagle is very adamant. Do they fight or go around? And then I think we'll do your idea, David. I think rather than it being, you know, a bunch of 13 dwarves and one halfling, but I like the idea like the party sees an eagle, giant eagle, carrying away a dwarf who does not seem to want to be carried. Does not seem to want to be carried away. And it's like, I think the assumption might be that it's going to go be eaten. It's definitely not, right? But it's like the idea that, you know, there's a dwarf that was missing and they like a Saint Bernard like picked it up and carried it off back to where it needs to go, but the dwarf doesn't know that, right? Because the eagles can't communicate that to it. So again, the idea is that like they are helpful, but they're just kind of a little socially awkward, right? Okay, cool. That's the giant eagle. And then giant owl we have already. Giant elk we have already. Ooh, stone giant. Yeah, stone giants are really interesting in Khûm. Because everything has to be different, right? I can't just have a regular thing. Let's do stone giant. Do I have hill giant? I feel like I should. Here, I mean, it's literally in the hills. Yeah, okay, hill giant and then stone giant. I feel like I'm always skipping one. So hill giants are a little bit unique in Khûm as well. Hill giants basically are hill giants as they're presented in the monster manual. But because we're talking about like a localized area with this campaign, they get a little bit more specialized. So let's talk about our hill giants. Hill giant. Scrolling. Fire, Frost, Hill. So similar to Ettins and, you know, ogres and everyone, trolls and everyone else, the hill giants are descended from divine beings. They have kind of fallen the furthest from their mythic beginnings. And again, as they're kind of depicted in the monster manual, they're basically gluttons. Like, they gorge on everything that they can reach. They were originally devoted to Mut, the god of constitution. And they've like long forgotten about that, but what they do remember is basically they're just like, it's not hunger, right? But they're like insatiable need to eat. It's gluttony. If they were hungry, that'd be one thing. But they're not hungry. They just like to eat and continue to eat. So there is a leader called the Yar, which is Yaar, who is just like the most corpulent member of the tribe ish. And they think nothing but their next meal and occasionally their own survival. That like food comes first, survival comes second. All food is supposedly given to the Yar first, but many hill giants hold back small portions, hoping to one day make themselves the Yar. So the history of them is that they were basically rare, but not unheard of in Khûm in the ancient days, thanks to the cold winters, right? They're not really adapted to living in the cold. They tended to haunt human settlements and feast on garbage. When the sorrows came, the giants were in sort of a bad way. Some of them fled into the caves, and one particular Yar eventually grew so large that they couldn't leave the cave again. And so this giant is, you know, grown larger and larger, and eventually it's like basically a little more than like a wall of horrible flesh. And other hill giants sort of worship this one as a god. And that's basically the only hill giant presence we have in Khûm at present. Let's see what kind of hooks we have here. I wrote, a hill giant is preying on goat herds, too fat to bestir itself any further. Kind of interesting on the little plain. The characters encounter a side passage the Yar is blocking, a wall of flesh. I like that. That's kind of an underground thing. A hill giant attempts to convince the characters to slay the Yar for them. That one I kind of like. Now, normally, I have broken some of the giants, mainly the frost giants, out into NPCs because I think they have like a faction and they function more like a responsive political group. I'm keeping the hill giants and the stone giants here as monsters because they're basically isolated from the politics of what's going on in Khûm. The hill giants are definitely sentient in the same way the giant eagles are, but they're not really involved in the maneuverings, so them as NPCs, I think it's easier to think of them as monsters. So yeah, I mean, I think a hill giant squatting, plants itself. on a small settlement, a small human settlement, and demands tribute, right? Classic. Like, that's like the bog standard monster encounter. But you could still roleplay it, right? I think I've done that style of encounter a bunch of times. Hill giant. Okay. I like the Wall of Flesh one, but I think it's gotta be underground in that case, and I don't think I have them. Do I have them listed as underground? Because the minute you do that, then it, like, this is where the giant is, you know, because if it's stuck in one cave. I don't. Let's do it. Because I like that one, right? That they come upon, like, a side cave. Oop, went too far. Hill giant. The party, while underground. Oops. Nope. There we go. While underground, the party happens upon a wall of flesh, a cavern that the hill giant Yar is sealing. Yuck. And then hill giants approach the party. Attempting to convince them to kill the Yar for them. And it's like, I wanted to have Jarl be the word, right? But the notion that, like, they can't really pronounce it anymore was sort of interesting to me. And then we have stone giants. Stone giants also have a unique history in Khûm. Let's talk about stone giants. Giant stone. So, while all these different types of giants in the prehistory and the vanished time basically didn't stay loyal to their original dictums, right? That they were supposed to watch Yogg and make sure Yogg didn't escape. Stone giants were the only ones that did. And they were sort of the patron of No, the god of wisdom. And what essentially happened was that when the gods came back to see, like, what had happened, No knew that the stone giants, the giants that would eventually become the stone giants, had been loyal. And so, but didn't want them to be caught up in the wrath of the other gods, so they hid them and disguised them to look like stone. So my stone giants aren't, like, people-shaped, they're, like, rock-shaped. They're much more like the giants in the Hobbit film, right, where they just kind of look like pieces of igneous rock, right? They don't speak. They're basically invisible to the naked eye when they don't move. Yeah, most stone giants are invisible to the naked eye, hiding dormant against mountainsides. When they stir, they resemble enormous humanoid figures made from living stone. A clever eye, however, will see the stone is only an outer coating, revealing muscle and skin beneath. They are utterly silent and construct their stone dolmens in peace. So the way they work is that they sleep most of the time, right? They're usually dormant. And then every once in a while, they will get up and they will go around and they will basically make these, like, dolmens. They'll stack stones up and make, like, stone monuments out of boulders, and then they'll go back to sleep. So they are not violent, they are not dangerous, they just kind of make these strange monuments and then go back to bed. They can get violent if you, like, get in their way or stop them from doing it, right? But no one knows why. No one knows what the purpose of these dolmens are. It's kind of theorized that they're meant to be, like, hooks, or they're not hooks, they're meant to be, like, warnings, right? Like, that something is coming. That the end is nigh. That, like, right before the Sorrows, there were a bunch of them. You know, at an earlier point in history, there were a bunch of other stone giants that came out to kind of warn about an oncoming disaster. That they are able to see sort of the future, but no one knows that for sure. No one has ever spoken to a stone giant. So let's look at our hooks here. The party observes a stone giant building a dolmen and scares it away. And I think that's a big part of it. It's like they are skittish. They don't like to be seen, right? They want to continue to hide. Basically, Ignon told them, like, you know, be like the stone, do not be seen. And then they've taken that to heart, right? Observes a stone giant building a dolmen and scares it away. So I don't hate the idea this one doesn't have any combat in it. I think that's kind of cool. Scares it away. The party accidentally camps on a stone giant. I think this is kind of like the Gale of Dur one, where it's like the whole mountain is a Gale of Dur, right? I think this is a similar thing. When it stirs. And then a stone giant attempts to warn them. Oops. A caverner. A cavern. A stone giant attempts to warn the party. Stops the party and attempts to warn them by constructing a dolmen. Stops the party and attempts to warn them by constructing a dolmen that they cannot understand. Like, maybe the second one could turn into a fight, but I like the idea that they're relatively, like, they would really have to go out of your way to try to fight a stone giant, because they do not want to fight. They are not very violent. Okay, that's the stone giant. Yeah, we're making good progress here. What's next? What's next? Griffins. Griffins and harpies. Okay. I got nothing for griffins. I have no idea what the deal with the griffin is. Let's look up griffins. So if a giant eagle is intelligent, then I feel like a griffin is not intelligent, right? A griffin is just kind of a hunting beast. Kind of like a wyvern. Griffins. Ferocious avian carnivores with muscular bodies of lions. Horse eaters. Interesting. They hunt in small prides. That's cool. Flying high over plains and forests near their rocky cliffside areas. Herd animals and horses are the prey they crave above all others, so they also hunt and kill hippogriffs. Cool. Okay. Let's make a thing for them. Griffins. CR2. A griffin. When it spots horses, a griffin screeches to alert its pride mates, which descend quickly towards their prey. Those riding or herding horses dread the griffin's piercing cry, preparing themselves for the bloody fight that inevitably follows. It ignores a horse's rider when possible, and a rider that abandoned its mount or a herder that releases one or two horses can escape unharmed while the griffin targets its chosen prey. Okay. Yeah, if they attempt to protect their horses, they attract the full fury of an attacking griffin. That's kind of cool that they're, like, very hyper-specialized. They lair in high rocky cliff tops, build their nests, aggressive and territorial, brutal aerial combat to defend their eyries, tearing and shredding the wings of flying intruders. Creatures that climb to a griffin's lair are plucked from the cliffs and eaten, or knocked from the heights to go tumbling to their deaths. And then trained mounts, right? A griffin raised from an egg can be trained to serve as a mount. Time-consuming, expensive, and dangerous. A griffin is a fierce and loyal steed. It bonds to one master for life, fighting to the death to protect that rider. A griffin mount retains its ravenous appetite for horse flesh, and a wise master ensures that a griffin remains satiated with other prey when passing through civilized lands. Okay, so them as horse eaters is cool. There's not a lot of horses in Khûm. Not naturally, anyway. They could be, like, caribou eaters, like deer eaters. They could eat goats. They could eat axe beaks. But I'd like them having, like, one particular focus. So maybe the griffins of Khûm specifically hunt caribou. If you do that, though, I guess you lose the cool rider thing, right? That they like to send on a rider. But there just aren't that many horses up here. People don't really use them because it's too cold. I guess there's steppes, though. It's also very mountainous. So let's see. Maybe there used to be more horses, and ever since the Sorrows, they haven't really brought them back because the snows are just too thick. Like, the horses don't do well with the snow. So the griffins have had to try to adapt, and they're kind of, like, testing out different prey. Let's see. A griffin, a hunting griffin. So this is a little bit specific, but descends on a mounted character. Descends on a mounted character and attempts to make off with their steed. Cool. Pretty classic, right? I like the idea of them like lions, like having a pride or something like that, right? Ooh, yeah, the characters, because they talk about them like stripping the feathers off. The characters encounter a griffin, like a lone griffin. Its wings torn. Its wings torn. And exiled from its pride. So there's a big thing with lions, right, about like males that try to challenge the male lion, right? The like the leader of the pride. So I like the idea that like with griffins they tear your feathers off, right? That's like how they fight, so that way you can't fly back up to the eyrie. So, you know, it's like lean and it's thin looking, right? Because it can't fly. And it could be a combat, but it's kind of desperate. Maybe you feel bad for the creature, right? That's cool. And then what's one that's like almost definitely not a combat? This could be some of the Griffin Riders, you know, kind of like the Axebeak, I guess. I don't know who would ride a Griffin in Khûm. Could be something about eagles again. Eagles and griffins could get into it. They could be competitors. Because the griffin is large, and the eagle, I think, is also large. Let me look. Although it might be huge. The giant eagle. I will check. Giant eagle. Giant eagle is large. Okay, yeah. So they're the same size. So it feels like they would have to get into some kind of a competition, right? Yeah, it's not a non-combat encounter, but you could see like a giant eagle being harried by a pride of griffins. So that for now. I would like to think of a non. It's harried across the sky by a pride of territorial griffins. I like them being kind of mean. They're sort of mean and territorial and like, yeah, cruel almost. You know, I think cruel is a good way to think of them. Okay, cool. That's the griffin. Harpies. So my harpies are a little different. I have my own kind of harpies. I feel like I say that a lot about a lot of monsters, but that's kind of how I roll. So let's look at the harpy. Because they're kind of gross and sexist. I'm not a big fan of the, like, half-naked woman who, like, lures you in with her, like, sexy song. But you still want to maintain the basic concept of them. So my harpies are a little different. Let me make a new thing for them. Harpies. So in Ondune, a harpy is actually like a big, gross, loathsome vulture creature. There's nothing human about it at all in appearance. It just sort of looks like a big, awful, loathsome vulture beast with teeth in its beak, and you know it's like a terrible consumer of flesh. But its song is very hypnotic, so it still has that like melodic, luring song. But the thing you see isn't a sort of like bird woman. It's just a horrible fucking bird. Right, like as unpleasant a sight as possible. Probably it's got like, you know, too many eyes and it's all scary and messed up, kind of like a deep crow or something. Yeah, maybe it's even got like a sideways beak. It's just horrible. But the song is really beautiful. So the harpy's goal then is to stay out of sight, right? Like to lure you in. Lure you off a cliff or lure you to your own death or whatever. Because there's all this stuff here in the book about them being cursed by an elven god, and I don't care about that stuff. So an obvious one would be the characters are lured over a cliff by a harpy's song. I mean, I guess it's very like the giant goat, right? Like, but again, the difficulty there is that you can't see them when they do this. Yeah, the characters here. The sound of a woman crying, the sound of a wounded woman weeping in pain is revealed to be a wounded harpy. So like I've done several of like, this is a wounded creature, a wounded harpy, a loathsome creature, perhaps not worthy of your mercy, of the party's mercy. Right, that's the question. If it's not like a beautiful, woman, do you still help it, right? And it's not dangerous to you, right? It's just like a matter of what do you do for it. And then, let's see. The party, what's one that could be a combat but isn't? Like a flock of them feeding on something, right? If you're kind of doing the vulture thing. They are also, flying creatures. They could have some kind of a beef with other flying creatures. We kind of just did that with the griffins, but I kind of like, you see a bunch of these big, black-winged, horrible crow, vulture, pterodactyls feasting on a body, right? Maybe it's like obviously a human's body, like a humanoid's body. Do you go, if you try to go to help them, then they sing at you and lure you in, yeah. Characters, like a flock of harpies, feasts on a dead humanoid. If the characters approach, the harpies lure them in with their haunting song. Like, it just looks like a bunch of evil birds, but then you get closer, you're like, oh god, it's worse than that. They're harpies. Okay, cool. I like that. This is good progress. Harpy. Ice spider. Do I have the ice spider? Yes, I do have the ice spider. The Crenchar! I love Crenchars. Crenchars are great. So if you're not familiar with a Crenchar, it is a really fun monster from... 3rd edition is where I know it from, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not in other editions. I don't actually know. Crenchar. So, they're fun, but they're basically just a predator, right? Like... So you kind of get that weird problem where I like them, but I don't necessarily know what you can do with them beyond them doing normal predator stuff. They have a fear effect. Carnivorous magical beast, similar to a big cat that could retract the skin from its face. So the idea is that it's just like a big cat, but then on its face, it can, like, peel its skin back to reveal this, like, horrible... its skull with all its muscles, and then it can pull the skin back. Like, the skin on its face is really loose, and it can, like, retract it to scare its prey. It's, like, a very, like, plausible monster, and that's what I always liked about it, right? It's not, like, some crazy thing. It's like, yeah, you could totally see that being a prehistoric animal or something. It's, like, just a little bit absurd, but otherwise very, very plausible. Okay, they made a loud screeching noise and displayed their terrifying visage to scare prey towards them, and then pursued to herd them in the right direction. So yeah, you could do that. You could do like a Crenchar ambush. A Crenchar pride ambushes the party, steering them one way with screams and visage. Because they have a fear effect, right? Steering them into the trap. And I think it's interesting, too, if, like, I haven't done any lore on the Crenchar in I don't even think they exist in 5th edition, but in On Dune. They definitely exist in On Dune because Crenchar are awesome. But I wonder if they're, like, specifically man-eaters. Like, it's this idea of, like, why would they get this face, you know? Yeah, that's cool, David. I like that one, the trap. I think I have that with the wolf, maybe? But I think it's cool. Is there, like, a different iteration of that? Like, I like them as... Like, why would they develop this power unless they were specifically trying to scare humans? Like, I don't feel like deer care what your face looks like, right? Like... But I like them specifically as, like, humanoid hunters. They're not evil. They just particularly like to hunt humanoids. So let me see if I have a wolf in a trap. Because I think I do. This is the problem, right? Is I've already done a bunch of work. And you get all the obvious ones out of the way. A dire wolf is snagged in a hunter's trap, lashing out at anyone who tries to help them. Yeah, darn. Well, okay, what's an iteration of that, though? Like, I like that, because you definitely need one that, like, that's a very good way to do... And I basically did that with the harpy, right? Like, the harpy is wounded and needs help, so how do we spin Crenshaw in a trap to make it unique? Is it... They're not very smart, so it can't be, like, faking being in a trap. What if that's the thing? Is that, like, what if there's a Crenshaw in the trap? It's kind of the opposite of what you said, David, but, like, the characters... What if they're, like, weirdly cunning, you know, and they're good at, like, luring people in? A Crenshaw is caught in a trap, and when the players come to help the Crenshaw, he's caught in a trap, and when the characters come to help the Crenshaw, the rest of the pride attacks. Right? That, like, they almost kind of planned it that way, right? That they have this, like, cunning. That's really interesting. I like that. Trapped in a natural formed pit, can't climb out. Yeah, maybe. That's cool. That it's like, it seems like, oh, we'll help the poor creature. And, like, the creature is caught. It's not like it's faking it. But other Crenshaws are using that as, like, bait, right? I think that's neat. Okay, one more. What's like a pet Crenshaw, a Crenshaw cub? How many cubs have I done? I feel like I've done a lot of cubs, but let's look. Cub. Dire wolf, and it's, yeah, right, newborn cubs. I've done the, like, Yeti tyke. Ooh, what if it's like, cause I've done like baby Yetis. Yeti tyke wanders across the party's path crying for its mother. What if it's like too young of a Crenshaw that's trying to attack them? Like a solitary Crenshaw. Far too young, right? Far too young to pose a threat. Pounces on the party. You know, it's like the size of like a house cat's too small, but it's like, this is not a danger, right? On the party. Do they fight it? Do they fight it? Do they seek its family? Okay, cool, awesome. I love Crenshaws. They're really fun. Let's see. Lycanthrope. So I'm actually gonna take the Lycanthrope off this list because they're basically NPCs. Like Lycanthropes in Khûm are essentially orcs. So we're gonna skip that. Mammoth I've done. Ogre I've not done yet. Okay, cool. Ogres, going back to our like list of giants, are basically creatures that are full of rage. Is the idea that they were, if the Ettins were sort of philosophers, the ogres, when they were confronted by the gods, like kind of spoke back at them, right, and was mad and said, like, you know, they were petulant. And so they were basically turned into giant toddlers, like constantly consumed with rage, but not murderous rage, like sort of tantrum, right? Like ogres are basically trapped in a state of like prepubescence. You know, they're kids constantly, perpetually throwing a tantrum. So they like to smash things, and they like to kind of like flail around and deal damage. Like everything is unfair to an ogre. You know, it wants this and it wants that, and the fact that it can't get it is super unfair. You know, it has this childlike sort of sense of entitlement. So, I mean, I think a really obvious ogre one is that it sees the party has something, right? Like something shiny, a magic item, and the ogre wants it and demands it. An ogre demands an item that the party is carrying. If they don't surrender it, it attacks. And I mean, you could even have it like they give it up and then it wants something else. Like it wants to get into a fight, right? If they surrender it, Yeah, if they don't surrender it, it attacks. It attacks. If they do surrender the item, it wants something else. Like it doesn't want it anymore if they are willing to give it up, right? I think that's cool. What about an ogre who? I like the idea of, like, it's a pretty obvious combat encounter, but like an ogre that's basically just like throwing a tantrum. Like it attacks them, but it's like crying, you know, like in kind of a fussy way. So it's basically just like a regular ogre encounter, but it's there's this weird extra color on it that the ogre isn't mad or trying to take things from them. It's just like very, very upset and is like weeping, right? A weeping ogre attacks them in a fury. Ooh, got it. Attacks him in a fury, saying things like, I don't wanna, and it's not fair. And it's not fair. This one's got to be like an ogre is hurt, right? Is hurt in a very minor way and demands the character's kiss it to make it better. Kiss the owie and make it better. Right. I mean, I actually have to kiss it. They could probably just like cast Cure on it. But I like the idea that it's like really not like it doesn't have any hit points missing, right? It like banged its thumb or something like that. You know, it's like not actually hurt, but it thinks it is. Can you tell that I've worked with kids before? I love that. Cool. That's ogre. Owlbear we have. Purple worm we don't have. Okay, so purple worms are a little interesting. So I have them here in hills, which I think is interesting because I see them as being very underground, but you could still do kind of a bullet thing with it, right? So purply worm goes here. So purple worms in my setting are actually the same species as Umber Hulks. Umber Hulks are like the male form, and the purple worm is the female. It doesn't work till it gets kissed. Obviously, that's where the magic is. I like that too because that's like a currency that they're like, will they do it? Will they smooch it? It's this like dirty, gross ogre thumb, you know? Okay, purple worm. Let's see. So purple worms are the like female form of an Umber Hulk. And they eat a particular kind of like microbe or lichen that grows or lives in stone, kind of like plankton. And so they're not teeth. I think they have like razor sharp like baleen, and when they almost like a dune worm or whatever, an old man of the desert. When they're filter feeders. When they basically give birth to their offspring, these like Umber Hulks that run around, and they basically Umber Hulks go and they find the stuff, and then they signal to their mother, and then the purple worm goes over and eats it, right? So they're not aggressive in the sense that they would really attack the party, but if the party accidentally attacks an Umber Hulk or fights an Umber Hulk who can be aggressive, that will summon a purple worm. Right. It almost happened in one of the one-shots I ran in Khûm. They fought an Umber Hulk, and like, basically they have like a certain like countdown of rounds until the purple worm shows up. And they were not high enough level to fight a purple worm. Let me just tell you that right now. Okay, so I think like a purple worm, this is the hills still, right? Passes by underneath and absolutely wrecks the ground and causes a minor earthquake. A purple worm. The characters happen to be standing on a deposit of purple worm food. I can't figure out what that's called. And it grabs one of them and moves on. On a deposit of purple worm of lichen. And it, without even noticing them, swallows a character and burrows on. Right? The characters discover a tunnel created by the purple worm that speeds them on their way. That was easy. Cool. We're flying. Rhinoceros. Man, I'm so tired of these herd animals. Okay. So this is, in my head, this was a woolly rhinoceros, right? Because it's kind of cool and prehistoric, and it's very icy up here. Woolly rhino. So let's go woolly rhino. I think this is like the last, like, I am a big, scary, ungulate creature that, you know, they have to encounter. Woolly rhinoceros. So the obvious thing with rhinos, right, is they have bad eyesight. The characters startle a woolly rhinoceros. A woolly rhinoceros, and it charges them. That it's, you know, like eating grass or doing whatever. It's a little bland. Maybe it's like rooting around for roots or something. Boy, I'm so tired of these big horned ungulates. Like, I should probably get rid of them, but I'd at least condense some of them. But I do like the idea that, like, there are a lot of creatures here and that there is some difference between them. Like, I like to think of it as a challenge, less of a, like, drawback. But it does make this moment suck really hard. So we've done them as, like, beasts of burden. I've done, like, the wounded one. We've done, like, it's being hunted. I've even really done, like, there's a boar that's basically blind. We've done the blind boar. So what's another woolly rhino encounter? So one that could be a combat. One that definitely isn't a combat. We've done, like, the calf, right? We've done the young one. We've done maybe, like, a really old one. It's like looking for a place to die. It's kind of interesting. I mean, you could do poaching stuff too, like you brought up before with the aurochs, David, because, you know, rhinos tend to be poached for their horns. Yeah, this might be a good one for the poacher. Yeah, what if you do, like, you come across a rhino, a woolly rhinoceros lies dead, which I've done a couple of those, but, like, lies dead, its horn cut off by poachers. (1d6 plus 2 human thugs). The characters can pursue the thugs and punish them. Pursue the thugs to recover the horn or punish the interlopers. Yeah. Punish the criminals. Yeah, okay. That's cool. So it could be an encounter, but it doesn't have to be. And then one that's definitely not an encounter. I think the woolly rhino is native to the area in the way that, like, I don't think that the aurochs necessarily is. The mammoth is native, the woolly rhino is native, but the giant elk and the warg are not. Rhinos. I'm trying to think, like, those little birds, right? Oh, what if it's, like, trapped in a river or something? It's, like, trapped in the ice. It's kind of cool. Yeah. A woolly rhino is caught is caught. It breaks, yeah, like falls through the ice and splashes into a frozen river. Characters can choose to rescue it. Characters must act fast if they wish to rescue the great confused beast. Oh, that's cool, David. I like that one. Too weak to be left by the herd, and now the vultures are circling. A druid is looking to find one and ask the players for help. Yeah, those are both good. Let's see. Which one should I replace it with? Because, yeah, the 2 week one seems like it's old, which I kind of like. But I like the druid is looking to find one and ask the players for help. Let me write down under NPC ideas. A druid is seeking a woolly rhinoceros and asks the players to help track one down. It's kind of cool. I mean, you could even have, if you really wanted to be cruel, you could even say that, like, the druid is actually leading poachers, right? Like, that they inadvertently, like, lead poachers to it. Is the druid actually leading poachers to the animal? Right, that's a little cruel, but it's interesting. It's an option. That's cool. Thanks, David. I like that idea. Okay. That's the woolly rhino. Oh, you need to add to the wild shape library? That's cool, though. I like that element. Let me put that, too. So I think you could do either or. Now I almost want to go back and, like, put that in. Or do they simply need to lead? They simply need to acquire the wild shape. I always forget about that thing. It's just an option. You know, I could play it by ear. Because I think you could separate that out. You could have, like, a druid is looking for an animal in order to wild shape into it, and a poacher posing as a druid. Like, those could be two different hooks, right? It's kind of neat. I like that. Okay, let me see. We were at the woolly rhino, so we're pretty far down. Snow golem. I think, yeah, I've done the snow golem. I've done the troll. I've done the white dragon. I've done the winter wolf. I've done the warg. I've done the yeti. Boom. That's hill. Okay. Nice job. Let's go through mountain. I've got 20 minutes. Let's go through mountain and see if there's any that I haven't done yet. But I suspect that we are very close to being done here, because I think it's just going to be... Right? No, not a poacher at all, exactly. So Blood Crow, we've done. Crag Cat, we've done. Etten, we've done. Frostworm, we've done. Galeb Duer, we've done. Giant Bat, we've not done. Okay. Giant Bats. So the Giant Bats are kind of like the Giant Eagles a little bit, in that they are intelligent, but their intelligence is kind of unknowable to dwarves. They're called Drogazar, or Night Hunters in Dwarven. So let me put them actually under D for Drogazar. Drogazar. Giant Bat. So they're located both underground and in the mountains. They have appeared before in the one shot that I ran, and they are friendly if alien, right? Like they have kind of a different mentality than most humanoids. But they can be reasoned with. They can be treated with. Horn Hollow has a colony of Drogazar that live in it, which is kind of the home base of the campaign. So let's see. Oof. You know, there's been surprisingly little Fast and the Furious tonight. I don't want to jinx it. We only have 15 minutes left, but it's been pretty quiet. So Drogazar, let's see. They make jewelry out of like insect parts. So you could do something with that, right? They're not particularly violent, but I think a combat isn't a terrible idea. Just as an option. So, like, you know, the cave the party is staying in when they camp, right? The party camps in a cave. That's actually the territory of a flight of Drogazar. Drogazar. Okay, that's pretty simple. So again, I think that one is one of those ones that could go either way, you know? Maybe there's like a particular tribe of Drogazar that drink blood. You know, like vampire bats. That's kind of cool. Yeah. A hunting party of blood-drinking Drogazar descend on the character. That's like the obviously combat one. Of blood-drinking Drogazar descend on the party. So I want something with their jewelry, right? Like they make these kind of fabulous jewelry out of insect parts. So like some kind of an exchange or a trade, right? Like I can see that being the consequence of staying in the cave. That's the home of the flight of the Drogazar. But I like the idea of them, like Drogazar intentionally trying to give items to the dwarves, right? Like they want to make an exchange. Yeah, there's some good firewood, metal that the party has, that the Drogazar are willing to trade. The Drogazar want to trade for their jewelry. Or, well, you know what? This is more interesting. What if one night, while sleeping, several of the party's goods are replaced with insect jewelry? They fly in and they like swap them out, right? Like kind of like chewingas. Yeah, that's cool. Because then it's like there's an interesting thing there that they don't understand trade. The trade has to be voluntary. They just think if they take something and put something else in its place, that it counts as trade, which I think is fun. Okay, that's the giant bat. For mountain, giant goat, we did. Giant eagle, yep. Giant owl, yep. Giant stone giant, yep. Griffin harpy, yep. Ice elemental, I've done. Ice method, I've done. Ice spider, I've done. Lycanthrope, we're gonna remove, right? Ogre, I've done. Owlbear, I've done. Snow golem, I've done. Snowflake ooze, I've done. Troll, I've done. White dragon, I've done. Winterwolf, I've done. Yeah, okay, that's mountain. Let's look at tundra. Ankheg, okay. Haven't done the Ankheg yet. Let's do the Ankheg. So the Ankheg is interesting. It's basically what it is in the book. It's a giant burrowing ant critter. See, I had to say it. Now here comes the Fast and the Furious. But in the case of an Ankheg, I have kind of tied them to one of my other races. I've tied them to the Grimlock, which are basically like subterranean orcs that herd beetles. So the Ankheg is basically the sheepdog to my Grimlocks. So let me look them up. But I also have a write-up on the Ankheg as well. They have like a weird thing with pheromones. So this one might be relatively easy because I think I've already done some hooks here. Yeah, they're gigantic burrowing ants. They're once subterranean predators, but were since tamed by the Grimlock, orcish herdsmen driven underground by the Sorrows. They appear to be trained to be guards and herders for the swarms of gigantic insects that call the passages and caverns of Khûm home. Ankhags have an odd relationship with their Grimlock handlers. Grimlock herders smear themselves with a chemical paste that makes them smell like Ankheg queens, meaning their colonies serve them. So I think maybe it's even less of like smearing them and more about like they have like a bladder that they hang around their necks, right? That the Ankhags like respond to and protect them. Okay, so prior to the arrival of the Grimlocks, Ankhags competed with Kavaken, which are kind of a a subterranean dog creature for prey in the tunnels and passageways. They were slowly domesticated over the course of centuries. They now have proved invaluable to keep the subterranean herds in line. And then more than one dwarven clan has inquired about the secrets of Ankeg domestication, and they developed a version themselves. So here are the hooks I have. Any party that runs afoul of a Grimlock herder will have an Ankeg to deal with. Meh. Slaying an Ankeg queen covers the characters in its pheromones, and an Ankeg wanders the Stoneway searching for its lost queen. So not great ones. So let's see. We kind of already have, like, the bullet purple worm thing of, like, something burrows underneath you and causes a, you know, oops. And they're not big enough to really, like, make have a seismic effect on the ground. So let's look at them as they're written here. Lurkers in the earth, powerful mandibles to dig winding tunnels deep beneath the ground. So we could do an Ankeg attacks the party when they draw too close, or if they draw too close to the beetle swarms. Attacks a party that draws too close to a swarm of beetles. To a herd of giant beetles. Cool. Pretty basic. Oh yeah, the characters discover a dead Grimlock and loot its, like, bladder, its Ankeg bladder, its pheromone bladder, meaning that Ankegs serve them. Pheromone bladder, meaning that Ankegs serve them. Something with, like, an Ankeg queen could be interesting. Like acid, right? So they've got all that, like, poison spit and stuff. Yeah, the characters stumble into the lair. This all feels underground. I might not make them tundra anymore. Stumble into the acid-drenched lair. Lair of an Ankeg queen. They'll need to move quickly and quietly to avoid drawing its attention. Because think of them like ants, right? They're humongous. Okay. Let's just make it subterranean, but it's good to do, so no worries there. Ka-chow. Okay. Axebeak we did. Bloodcrow, Bullet, yup. Cragcat, yup. Cryad, yup. I've done. Direwolf, yup. Frostworm, yup. Giant Boar, yup. Giant Eagle, Giant Elk, uh-huh. Griffin, yup. Crenshaw, uh-huh. Mammoth, Lycanthrope, which we're going to cut. Owlbear, yep. Purple Worm, yep. Remoraz, yep. Snow Golem, yep. Snowflake Ooze, yep. Troll. White Dragon. Will-O-Wisp I've done, yep. Winter Wolf. Warg. And Yeti. Okay. So we could jump into Subterranean, but I think I'm going to leave it there, and we'll do that on an upcoming one, because there's going to be a lot of them that are Subterranean only. Things like Beheers and Black Puddings and, you know, Dark Tentacles, Dark Mantles, Dow, things like that. So I think that will almost be an entire stream on its own. But we did a lot of work today. That was a bunch of creatures that we got figured out. That's awesome. I'm really pleased with that. There's also NPCs to do, which we will probably do in another stream as well. Because there's like a lot of different kinds of NPCs, and I'm not really 100% sure how to break them all down. That will sort of be a conversation in and of itself. But, you know, it's like, can I see the list here? I have like Dwarven Soldiers, Dwarven Scouts, Dwarven Messengers, Dwarven Merchants. But then, like, are Dwarven Merchants and Human Merchants different? Yeah, probably. You know, Dwarven Miners, Dwarven Refugees, Dwarven Priests, other parties of adventurers. But then there's like Human Miners, Human Outlaws, you know, Poachers, that kind of a thing. Human Poachers. Darrow, Frost Giants, Grimlocks. You know, there's just so many different kinds that probably they're also based. But what's interesting about those is that they're probably not based on geography necessarily, but they're probably more based on like well, they're based on geography, but they're not based on like topography. They're not based on biome. So that might be like in the Southwest, if you encounter dwarven merchants, they probably work for this clan. But if you're in the Northeast and you encounter dwarven merchants, they probably work for this clan. That kind of thing. They're a little bit more tied to the politics, which makes them trickier. Some of them, but like poachers, outlaws, that they're pretty agnostic. So that's a whole conversation we'll have in future. But I was really happy to get all the work done that we did on these encounters. These are cool. I'm excited to do some journeys in the campaign. I think it's going to be fun. Great. Well, thanks for coming out, everybody. As normal, I'm going to go through the spiel. If you enjoy this stream, we will be streaming every Sunday here from 6 to 8 p.m. PST, doing some world building stuff, at least for a couple more months. We'll see if I eventually run out the clock on how much actual work I can do on the campaign before we get players involved. But if you like me and you want to see my stuff, you can check out our Twitter. We're at XP Web Series. We shoot a lot. Right now we're doing a lot of monsters on our Patreon, which is patreon.com/XP Web Series. I am making homebrew monsters every weekday. So it is a lot of monsters. We've only done 5 so far, but we're about to start another week with some really interesting ones. So if you join our Patreon, you can get access not only to all the monsters that we post, but you can also vote for which monsters you want to see next if you join our Patreon. That's patreon.com/XP Web Series. And if you don't want to do any of that, you can just subscribe to the channel. That would be awesome. Go ahead and click that red subscribe button down there. That way you get notified every time we post a new video. And I will see y'all next Sunday when we do, we might do a Monsters of Khûm next week. I'm not sure. Maybe we'll just get crazy and do some politics. Might be fun to change it up a little bit. But thank you so much for coming, everybody. And I will talk to you all next week. Have a good one.